I followed the leads, and we got some of her stuff back. And I know she has told me over the years that, boy, I really appreciated that, and you did your job well. So that makes you feel good
Yeah.
when you get compliments. And I always said I'm a good dog, but you got to pet me every now and then. So.
I like it.
Okay, Boomer. Okay, Boomer. Okay, Boomer. Okay, Boomer. Okay, Boomer.
Welcome to OK Boomer. Thanks for listening. You just heard at the opening the voice of a good dog, Bruce Franks. It's my pleasure and my co-host Jimmy Amadoufis's pleasure to have had an hour-long conversation with Bruce. He is the recently retired police chief of Prophetstown who spent over 30 years in uniform, providing a tremendous service to this community that I grew up in and now enjoy in my retirement. 30 years? Boomer, I wouldn't have his job for 30 days, no matter how many times I got petted. So many of us would have that sentiment, Jimmy. But he did put on that badge for over 3 decades and served this village well and in so many different ways. Our conversation with Bruce is wide-ranging, discussing the pros and cons of being an officer, especially in the tumultuous days following the George Floyd murder in Minneapolis, what it takes to be an effective officer, and his involvement with community affairs like the fishing derby and Light Up the Park. This interview will be presented in 2 parts, with part 2 available next month on the 15th. We hope this conversation serves as a heartfelt thanks to Bruce's dedication and excellent service.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Bruce Franks. How are you?
I'm living the dream, sir. Thanks for asking.
You've even though you're retired, you've already had a busy morning taking your grandson to school?
I did do that. Yeah, the wife, she was going to take him. She's like, "Oh, I won't have my shower done, and you're going to have to take him." I'm like, "Yeah, I figured as much." So,
Hey,
anyway.
hey, that's a treat though. How many days of school has he had so far?
They've had 3. They started this past Wednesday. So.
All right. Hopefully he's off to a smooth start.
He's doing great. And then I'm going to talk to my daughter, and the granddaughters are doing well. So.
Wow, that's always good to hear. This is Jimmy Amadoufis here. Bruce, thanks for being on the podcast, and thank you for your service.
Love it.
Well, we love what you did. We're going to find out all about the various things you did, good, bad, and in between. Looking forward to the interview.
Perfect.
Yeah. So how long did you spend in uniform as an officer?
It was, not 30 years. I did do part-time 4 years prior to becoming full-time.
Where did you first start then?
Prophetstown. I was here my whole career.
Wow. So you're a part-time officer at Prophetstown
From 1990 to 1994. Yep. And then 94, I became full-time. Was offered the full-time position and took it. So.
That is awesome. I got to tell you that, and we're going to probably delve into the issue a little deeper later on, but being a police officer is not something I want to do. I had a taste of it being a teacher for 30 years, where I had to enforce rules and I had to discipline kids and mete out punishments, and didn't enjoy that part of the job at all. And so when I think about being an officer, no, I don't want to do that, especially if I got to wear a gun. What got you interested in being an officer?
Well, it's kind of a crazy story.
That's what we're here for. We're here for the crazy stories, bros. Bring it.
Awesome. Yeah, I had a cousin that was an officer in town by the name of Jamie Thomas. Him and Mike Fisk were hired about the same time.
Okay.
And by Larry Van Dyke. And my first wife and I moved just south of town to the family farm out there, the Myers. I don't know if you know them, but anyway. Art Meyer lives south of town, Art and Janet. But anyway.
All the Liz Piton listeners will.
Yeah, we lived there. And I was working as a manager for Hardee's restaurant down in the Quad Cities.
No kidding.
And he approached me one day. I seen him in town, and he's like, "Hey, you ever thought about being a part-time cop?" I said, "No way, not me." I was borderline rebel back in the day. So,
you were borderline what?
Rebel.
Okay. Yes. All right. Well, hey, it takes one to know one.
But But you know what? I always said over the years, I said, it takes, almost being a former outlaw to make a good cop. So
Uh-huh.
anyway, 'cause you know all the ins and outs and things they're thinking.
No,
So
the old proverbial wool wouldn't get pulled over your eyes too often.
there you go. There you go. But anyway, he approached me, and I'm like, well, I talked to the wife at the time, and I I did it obviously. And Moline at that time, all you had to do was have a 40-hour handgun class to be a part-time police officer.
No
I went
kidding.
down to Moline PD and did the week-long 40 hours, and there I was a part-time officer. So
Oh
working the
my.
weekends, nights I wasn't working the Hardee's, and so then in 1994, actually, Jamie Thomas, my cousin, left and went to Moline PD, and Mike offered. He was the chief at the time, and because Van Dyke had left and was with chief deputy of Whiteside County at that time when Roger Skipper was elected sheriff. And
Yeah.
so we're way back in the day. But
Oh yeah. All those names are familiar to me.
But yeah,
Not
that's how it came to pass.
So, some of those names are more familiar to you, right, Jimmy? Shut up, Boomer. You told me this was not going to be awkward, okay? All right, well, we won't talk about your legal situations. So So you spent your entire career at Prophetstown. Did you ever think about going elsewhere, or maybe even going to the county level?
I did apply and tested over in Clinton, Iowa.
Okay.
But unfortunately, was never called back for an interview or whatever. And that was pretty early on in my career. I think I had 2 years on full time. But yeah, and then I just everything I needed and wanted was right here.
So looking back, that might have been a blessing that Clinton never called back.
Yeah, I think God's intervention, maybe we'll call it that.
There you go.
But yes, so yeah, I've never went anywhere else. I mean, there was a couple times I was asked to be, go to the Whiteside County Sheriff's Office. I'm like, yeah, I'm good here.
Well, and that's to the benefit of Prophetstown and all the years that you were able to service them. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
So over 30 years, who was a good mentor for you? Maybe in your early years that helped pave the road for you a little bit.
Well, I'll be honest. Mike Fisk, when he was the chief and hired me full time. I mean, you got to know Mike, but Mike has a good time. So anyway, and he made the job enjoyable. He made it fun. I mean, yeah, you worked a lot of hours and you put in some overtime, but you really, and I think he impressed upon me that we're here to help. We're not here to screw up people's lives. We don't want to do that. Yes, we have to sometimes, but in their opinion, but just go out, do your job. And Mike, he was a people person, and I soon came to learn that you get a lot more with sugar than you do with salt. So we had conversations with some people, and yeah, my wife would say every time we go somewhere, especially in town, somebody will walk up to me and say, "Hey, Bruce, how's it going?" And I'll be like, "Hey, great, how are you?" Blah blah blah. We'll have a little chit chat, and they'll move on. And she's like, "You had no idea who that is, do you?" I said, "No, ma'am, I don't." But, I mean, over the years, you forget the names and the faces, but I met a lot of people over my years, so I've enjoyed every one of them.
I can only imagine. So, and Steve Swanson would, I've chatted with both him and Dan Eyrick to get a sense of what maybe some questions I could ask. So don't be telling any lies here, okay? So Steve said that was one of your stronger assets, is that you were a people person, that you could establish relationships, and that went a long ways in solving problems and establishing rapport, and for people seeing you as a human, not just as a badge.
I always told them, I said, I'm going to treat you the way you treat me. So, if they treated me great, then we got along good. And, there was a lot of situations that, I'll be honest, I talked my way out of, and, we got the end result, which is good. So.
And I'll actually want you to talk about some of those in a moment. But I want to do a follow-up question on the mentoring stuff. But how did you grow beyond that? Were there any other skills you picked up in maybe the last part of your career? Like, hey, I've gotten better at doing this.
Well, the last 10 years I was the chief, so as far as budgeting and management and those things, I think I got a little better at. And
The real fun, the real fun stuff, right?
Yeah, the headache phase. So before, all I had to do was put on a uniform and go and drive around. But then you become the boss, it's like, holy cow. So,
yeah.
And you don't have that buffer, between officer, chief, and then mayor. So I was it. There wasn't a buffer no more. But I'll be honest, me and Steve got along pretty real good. So,
and that's what he said also.
There were a few times, we butted heads, but you know what? He was set in his ways and I was set in mine, and we talked it out and got over it. So
excellent. Was there a time when he asked for your help and you were on lunch and that became an issue?
I when I got the question from you, I'm like, oh boy, Steve's talking out of school here. I thought that was under a hat.
Well, here's your opportunity to set the story straight.
Well, and what he told you is probably correct. So. Yeah, I lived just about 3 miles outside of town at the time, and I'd go home for dinner break, and I think him or the committee or Mike had told me at the time, don't be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, everybody else gets to eat, go home. Well, they lived in town, and I understand where they were coming from.
Yep.
Well, I was being a rebel that night, and I was home for dinner, and the mayor called. He's like, hey, I got a wide load down Main Street. Where you at? I said, oh, I'm at the south end of town. I'll be right there. Yeah, well, I was home. So
the far
then
south.
I got to feeling bad. I told him a little fib there. So I got to feeling bad. And the mayor always said, don't ever lie to me. It ain't gonna be good for you if you lie to me. So I called him on my way to town. I said, Steve, I point blank lied to you. I want to be clean. And he's like, get your butt. He said another word besides butt, but anyway, I said, yes, sir, I'm on my way. And we got the wide load through town and we talked about it afterwards. And he's like, don't ever do that again. I said, understood. So, yeah. That never happened again after that.
Yeah, you had
learned a lesson there that day.
You had a reckoning and you moved on.
We did.
Hey, let's take this opportunity right here to hear from our sponsors, okay? Brief message coming up.
Around P-Town, it's got the news that you can use. Around P-Town. AroundPtown.com, it's got the scoop with all the poop.
Ben's Barbershop, it's a place I like to stop. Whether it's to get a fancy do or just buzz off my mop, Ben's Barbershop. It's a place I like a lot, and you'd like it too if you did your do at Ben's Barbershop. That's Ben's Barbershop in Morrison, Illinois. Look 'em up on Facebook, make an appointment, tell 'em Jimmy I'm a doofus sent you.
Your position as chief, especially in a small town, as you said, there were no buffers between you and the mayor and the officers. You must have put in a ton of hours some weeks. What would be a guess at? Well, just give me what would be the maximum amount of hours you think you ever spent, and that's outside the huge calamities like the Prophetstown fire. Like on a regularly normal week, you'd be putting in how many hours?
Oh, there's probably 55 to 60 during the week. And then there was probably 10 to 15 hours after on my shift. I mean, it never failed, When I would come home, my phone would start ringing.
Yeah.
And count those. In my opinion, that's part of being a small town chief. When I said, yes, I'll accept the position as chief, that goes with it.
Here's Dan Eyrich, former owner, editor, writer, and everything else dealing with AroundPtown.com, talking about Bruce Franks.
Well, I guess the first thing that pops to my mind is dedication. I mean, I always thought that, Bruce was going to be there. I mean, there was never a question if something was going on. He was going to be there. So, I mean, I always thought that was number one. I think he had that obligation, that feeling of, obligation to the community, that he was, the guy as the police chief that when something was going on, he needed to be there or be involved in some manner. And that just was never a doubt as far as I was concerned with Bruce. I always knew, I wasn't going to have to call him and tell him something. He was already going to be there or involved.
Yeah, and I'm assuming your position was salaried.
Yes, sir.
So you're
Yes.
you're not logging in any overtime hours with that.
No, sir. Nope.
Yeah.
It was part of the commitment, in my opinion, when you said yes to the chief.
Yeah.
So.
Like teachers and other professions, man, the hours can just rack up. You said 55, 60 hours, and I'm sure that was probably average, and you easily would put in 70 to 80 hours.
It was.
So I'm impressed, and I know Dan and the rest of the community were impressed with your dedication and embracing that 24/7 aspect of your position. It's just a tremendous amount of time. Now you weren't slaving in a salt mine someplace, but the hours put in, along with the responsibility, the mental exhaustion that would go with all those hours. Very impressive.
There were some high stress days, and I had some confidants in town. I guess I'd see them out and about, and I'd stop, and we'd have a conversation, and I knew I could vent to those people, and they'd never say anything to anybody.
Awesome, you had some outlets.
Everybody needs those people. So
right. Well, Dan said you were also very even keeled. That you didn't get overly excited in situations that were tense, that there was some drama going on, people being pretty excited.
As an officer, people are looking you for direction and guidance, and I knew I had to keep the volume down, and we had to be thinking the whole time and split second decisions and things of that nature. So it's just the training that you go through, and it's like nowadays they have to have, I think, 30 hours. I think it's every 3 years. But when I was a chief, my guys were always going to classes because I figured the more education you had, the better officer you were going to be. So.
Absolutely. The training that you and your officers went through, do they reflect the trend now of trying to de-escalate situations, especially with those people who are mentally challenged?
A lot of psychological stuff right there towards the end of my career that I was sending them to, and things of that nature. And I mean, there was talk, I know before I retired, of every department needed basically a board certified psychologist on shift with you, but thank goodness that never happened yet anyway. So but
that sounds a little unrealistic.
The world is a crazier place nowadays, I believe. I could from the beginning to the end when I retired, it totally different.
For example, in addition to the training,
respect. I mean, back in the day, it'd be yes sir, no sir, and then towards the end, you'd pull somebody over for a traffic violation, and it's like, what the F do you want? Blah, 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 blah. And, and what do you do? And ain't you got something better to do? Why don't you go eat a donut? The lack of disrespect was just through the roof. So.
Oh, man. And you gotta smile and just deal with it.
And I'm like, okay, well, that was a warning, but now you're getting a ticket. So, I mean, I didn't do that all the time, but I was like, did you wake up on the wrong side of the bed today? Or, I'm not treating you that way. Why are you being disrespectful to me? Wow. Because I can, I'd get some answers like that. And it's like, come on.
Wow.
I know your parents raised you better.
Yeah. That's a great line. Yeah. And because sometimes you actually knew the parents, right?
Oh, After 30 years, I dealt with the parents as kids, and then I have, they grow up, get married, and have kids of their own. Then I was dealing with them, so I'm like, most of the time I'd be like, if they were younger, I'd say, "Who's your mom or dad?" And I'd know them. I might not know the kid, but I knew the parent.
Oh man, I can imagine you're running a background check on some of these guys. You come back to the vehicle, Bobby, I did a little checking on you, and your dad's name came up quite a bit too.
Yeah, well, and it's crazy. We used to say the apple don't fall too far from the tree. So Anyway,
Oh, yeah. Well, there's a lot of truth to that. So
there is.
that's obviously a downside of being an officer. What would be a couple other things that made the job challenging or made you grit your teeth now and then? Whether
I don't know, legislation, the senators, whatever downstate that are making up these laws or doing these laws, and we have to enforce them. And I mean, one of the dumbest ones I've ever thought of in my career. It's like, come on, Illinois, we're smarter than this. But
right,
if we had a violator that, well, of course, Illinois is a great state for FOID cards. One of the 3 in the nation, I think.
right.
So, but like them or love them, whatever. It is what it is. We deal with it. But if I arrested a guy on a felony and he's living with his wife who is not a felon and she has a valid FOID card, he can't possess firearms, but yet she can have them in the same household. That is just ludicrous to me. But
Yeah,
it's the way it's always been. So
that's part of the job. You
it's
don't.
just one of those. I just shake my head and holy cow. And there towards the end, I will be honest and say I think this new legislation they had, the Safety Act, we called it, and it is, and it seemed like the criminals had more representation and they had more rights than what the officers arresting them have. And
Sure.
it just drives me, you arrest a guy on a Friday night and he's walking back on your streets Monday morning, and I'm like, wait a minute, back in the day, this guy would have sat there until he went to trial. So,
Yeah, I'm sure that was frustrating.
But that was the frustrating part of it at the end, so for sure. But like I said,
along those lines, Dan said you were occasionally frustrated by the DA's office because after you do
the state's attorney's office, because and Democrat, Republican, we're not here to debate all that, but the best person for the job. And I know back when, Gary Spencer was the state's attorney back in the day, and I scratched my head on some of the things he did. But then we had this, I won't say the name, but everybody knows him probably. But this gentleman now, who I believe is not running for reelection, so which is good because he just, oh man, I've seen him let sex offenders walk out the door, and it's like, wait a minute.
Ouch.
As cops, we have to do our homework, and it's just like doing a book report. You got to have everything in it before, they go to trial or court, and we've got it covered. They wouldn't have got arrested if we didn't think we had the charge there to stick, and then they'd just walk out the door. And it's like, really? Come on, man, do your job. That was my thing.
Well, I can certainly understand how that'd be frustrating and motivation lowering for.
Morale. Yeah. It just kicks the morale right in the butt. Why should I go out here and protect these people when they're going to get nothing out of it? But I used to tell my guys, you do your job, let me worry about the state's attorney. And that's we have some conversations, and they weren't good ones a couple times, but anyway. Well, I just, I'd vent to him and he'd vent back, and I'm like, well, again, I can't go, he's the one that's trying them, and he's the one that's going to get them charged and hopefully convicted. But anyway, I couldn't do any more than what we were doing. So, but I did let him know my thoughts at times.
There you go.
That's all I could do.
So obviously there's been some challenges with your position. Talk about, give me 3 rewards of doing the job. 3 things that you look forward to doing that made you feel good about putting that uniform on in the morning.
Well, in recent years, obviously, we got a school resource officer, but back in the day, I'd stop in at the schools and I'd shake hands with the kids, and then, just seeing the smiling faces and, hi, Officer Bruce,
Yeah.
And again, that was awesome. And then when my favorite thing is if you had a burglary or a theft and you followed them clues, and those, being a detective basically is what I was being, and we were being, and we'd follow it until we got, okay, this was a guy, and we talked to him, and they either confessed or didn't, and we had enough evidence against them, so we'd arrest them. And I remember one time me and Mike, and might have been Terry Strike back in the day, I think we worked a case. We were awake for 36 hours.
Oh,
because you got the leads coming in. You got to stay with it.
While they're hot.
We just kept going, and we finally got the end result, and that made me feel real good because you felt like hey, I'm doing my job and I did my job well. So.
And the victim was I'm sure very grateful.
Very, very satisfied. And I know, I'll tell a story out, I guess, but that's how I met my second wife, because her house was burglarized. And
Oh my!
It's weird, I know, but it's funny,
Oh yeah.
how it works out. I had a friend, sheriff's office back he's still around, but anyway, he's retired. But he said, when I was married to the first wife, got divorced, and it was hard. I mean, that was rough times for Bruce Frank those years. But anyway, and then my second wife, I met her through this burglary at her house, and we got chit chatting, and I followed the leads, and we got some of her stuff back, and I know she has told me over the years that I really appreciated that, and you did your job well. So that makes you feel good when you get compliments, and I always said I'm a good dog, but you got to pet me every now and then. So.
I like it. So in that situation, crime kind of paid, at least for you.
Yeah. I got I got some satisfaction. So.
And I know you get a lot of satisfaction out of doing things that you don't have to do, like the fishing derby and lights in the park.
Yeah, it's just being a small town chief, I want to be involved with the community, and I think everybody should be, officer, chief included, and anybody that lives in the town and wants it to flourish. We need to step up and help out, because volunteerism isn't like it used to be. I know that.
Yeah, but you guys
numbers are low.
You weren't just putting in a few hours. I mean, you were running the show there at that fishing derby. I don't know if you were the head dude on the lights in the park, but you were there. I mean,
I kind of, and that was, I'll be honest, Dan Irick had talked about that the year prior, but then COVID hit, 2020, and me and him, I still remember it. I was down in the park, I was working, and he was in the park doing something, and we were talking, and I said, what do you think about a drive-through light-up Christmas light display? He's like, I thought about that for last year. And he's like, but if you want to take it on, it's all you, Bruce. I said, okay, thanks. So, yeah, we got it done, and holy cow, we were overwhelmed with the number of cars that drove through. And every year we try and make it better,
and
add something to it. And I've got a good group, that volunteers with me, and, Tony and Jamie Wade, Tracy
awesome.
and Joe Pratt, and Todd Murphy and his wife, and they're dedicated.
Yeah, well, you and your committee ought to be. I'm sure you are, and you ought to be proud of that.
Yeah. And thank goodness the park. They're like, when I approached them, they were like, well, yeah, we don't care, and we got nothing. It's closed anyway, so we might as well utilize it. So
darn right.
It was great, and I appreciate them people. So.
I appreciate it. I was gone for 30 years from Prophetstown, grew up here, left for 30 years, came back. So I've seen what the large suburbs are like in the Chicago area. I spent 30 years there, and coming back here, I'm still proud of this small town. It has that park district with a pool. It's got
that's a rarity, and there's a lot we have that a lot of the bigger communities than us don't have.
Right. And that includes lights in the park. It's like, great. Yeah. Is this small? Is this as big as some of the other cities around here? No, but it's ours, and it's growing.
It's ours, and exactly. And it brought you here to see it, so we're doing our job. So.
And that only happens with a lot of volunteer hours by people like you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
And the hours in the fishing derby and all the prizes that are accumulated and given out.
That was the police chief's job, and Mike did it for years. And then when I got in, and Larry Van Dyke, I think, started it way back in the day. And I remember he used to give away fishing lures and things like that. But now it got bigger and better, and it's funny in a small town, and I love it for that reason. One of the reasons I love this town, but you walk in I had a little green folder, and I'd have a money bag, and I'd walk in, and 9 out of 10 people that I'd walk into and see would say, "Oh, it must be fishing derby time," and they get their checkbook out. I mean, it was just automatic.
Awesome.
Automatic.
Oh
So
my.
yeah,
Well, it says something about
it
the
just and the
tradition.
people in the community, the businesses, they enjoyed that and loved it, and so
Well,
yeah, I had a lot of good support. So
if you weren't the people person that you are, it wouldn't have continued to grow.
yeah,
Here's Mayor Steve Swanson talking about Bruce's ability to obtain donations for the fishing derby.
He could get more donations than Jesus Christ himself.
yeah, I can sell ice cube to an Eskimo. So yeah, yeah, I should have been a salesman maybe, but no, I don't want a part of that. But anyway, but yeah, it was great. And I know I approached there towards the end. We approached the Moore Foundation for some things we needed, like our body cams and vests and blah blah blah. And you know,
Well, that
they
leads.
told me it's like, give me your wish list. Give me your wish list. So I mean, I threw a drone in there, and the apartment's got a drone now, and
Wow.
we got new vests, and the body cams are got to be in effect January 2025. So I'm like, well, let's get ahead of the game so we know what we're doing and get used to them. And
Are you currently using them now?
so yeah, the city probably, yep, police department has been for 2 years, I think now. So,
You guys should have a sign on your vest saying "Smile." You're on camera.
Yeah, I know. And before I retired there towards the end, I know people would call and complain, hey, your officer did this and your officer did that. I said, well, you know what? We have body cams now, and I'm going to go back and look at the footage. And if you say it's true, we'll call you back and we'll have a conversation. And if you want to file a complaint, we'll do so. And they're like, wait, you got body cameras? Yep, we do. Click. So, I mean, it worked for us too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah.
So that's obviously a huge improvement in the department that you would point to as saying, hey, this is how our department's grown with all that technology.
Yeah, and I got a grant for a squad car. I checked into it, and we got a partial grant for one of the squads. And then one of my officers, he asked me about a new squad, and he's no longer here. But anyway, he asked me about a new squad. I said, it's a pain in the butt, but you know what? If you want to take my position or be in my position someday, you need to learn it. So I said, if you want to go after a new squad with grant money, go for it. And he got it done. So
all right.
Yeah.
Way to delegate.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So
are there any other accomplishments for your department? I mean, we've already listed huge ones. I think the lights in the park, the fishing derby, and the technology you got there. Anything else that you feel good about accomplishing in your tenure?
Holy cow! I just I was never a guy that wanting to pat myself on the back.
Well,
I just figured I was doing my job.
Well, step up, Bruce, and do it now. Doggone it!
Yes, sir. So, I don't know. We used to have. I think we've had a couple back in the day. I kind of got away from them, which I wished I would have. But coffee with a cop, and go to the coffee shop or sit in the mini mart or talk to people and BS with them, whatever. And if they had any problems or issues, we'd get them out in the air. And so that was a good thing, I think. And I just wished I would have kept up on that. But then, as it's hard in police work today to find people that want to be cops.
I should think so.
It's crazy to me. It's crazy. And then we got to where, our numbers were low. And so I had to be out on shift and working the road and doing all that good stuff.
You guys have a difficult job and you're not making much money. I mean, I know where you live, so I can guess pretty much that you're in the middle class. You're not missing any meals, but you're not you're not being paid what it's worth. And the ton of hours you guys put in, and the fact that you have to wear body armor because there's a chance every day you're going to take a bullet. Wow.
It is a mindset and a heartfelt job, I believe. If your heart ain't in it and your mind ain't in it, you ain't going to succeed. But you got to be willing to help people when they're at their worst. That's how I always played. I mean, even though they might get arrested, I would always have that conversation. You know what? This is bottom. Now we're going up. We're making you better. So
that's a great way.
You have to go to jail. Yeah, you have to deal with these charges, but we're going to get you going the other way. And I'm here if you need something. And I had a lot of people over the years that would call and say, hey, remember that? What you said? I said, yep. What do you need? We'll get you on the right path.
So tell me about some of those people that did move from the bottom to the right path. Just, you don't need names or real
Right. We
details.
won't get into those.
How do you know that they were actually moving in the right direction? Because of what?
Well, as it goes in a small town, everybody knows everybody, which is a good thing, in my opinion, because I knew where everybody lived. If they give you an address, I'd say that's so and so. That's so and so. And after 30 years, you get to do that. And there was, I've had one in particular, a young man that was dealing with the drug problem and had it bad, and I arrested him on such, and and he grew up to be, I don't know, management somewhere. I couldn't even tell you where, but
awesome.
I remember before I retired, people hear you're going to retire, and then he'd come into the station one day and he's like, "You remember back in 2005?" And I'm like, I can't remember my birthday, let alone. Anyway, he's like, "Oh no, you helped me out and you showed me, and talked me through it." And he said, "I've been, clean for 20 years." And I'm like, that is awesome. That is awesome. That's the
Wow.
goal I want to have.
Wow.
And then I had another young man that reached out to me. He's like, all the bad things that I've done and everything that you helped me through. And it was heart touching. It really was.
I bet it was.
And he just appreciated me and appreciated how I dealt with him and his family. And, I was always trying to be a professional, but yet be a people person, put myself in their predicament.
And that'll conclude part 1 of our interview with Bruce Franks. Part 2 will cover specific cases that he was involved with, people he dealt with in those cases. He answers the question, how do you not get PTSD or become cynical in a job like yours? He'll talk about times when he felt his life was threatened. We'll talk about the George Floyd murder case. And we'll talk about his post-retirement. Until then...
Shut up! And kids, don't forget to be checking in with AroundPtown.com. It's got all the news that you can use. Stay hip, stay classy with AroundPtown.com. And for you fellas that want that hip and classy look, well, then you're going to want to get your butt to Ben's Barbershop chair. That's right, Ben's Barbershop. Look him up on Facebook.com. He's in Morrison. You make an appointment, you're going to love it. If you enjoyed listening to Boomer here, he'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe to his podcast so you'd get notifications of when the next episode's coming up. Maybe leave a rating on a review. But yeah, go ahead and subscribe. That helps the podcast grow, and that makes the little fella feel so much better. And if you had any feedback for him, go ahead and contact him at ttaudioworks@gmail.com. Again, that's ttaudioworks@gmail.com. Okay, I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.